Imagine a woman with a dream that seemed impossible to achieve. Hannah, simple and dedicated, carried a pain that only a few understood. Her greatest desire was to be a mother, but as time went on, she remained without children. Her days were marked by silences, hidden tears and prayers that seemed to go unanswered. Even so, Hannah held her faith firmly, believing that something greater could happen. Little did she know that God had a special plan for her life. In those days, being a mother was seen as a sign of blessing and honor, and the absence of children brought Hannah humiliation and sadness. As the days went by, her hope weakened, and the words of others became even deeper wounds. But with great faith and courage, Hannah decided to cry out to God sincerely and intensely. The answer she received not only transformed her life, but also impacted the history of her people. In this video, you will discover the touching story of Hannah, the mother of the prophet Samuel in the Bible. Hannah was a generous and kind woman married to Elkanah, who loved her deeply and always showed his affection for her. However, something saddened her greatly. At that time, it was common for men to have more than one wife, and Elkanah was also married to another woman named Peninnah. Peninnah, unlike Hannah, had many children. In those days, having children was seen as a great blessing and brought honor to the woman and her family. Mothers were valued for keeping the family name alive. For Hannah, this dream of becoming a mother seemed impossible to achieve. Year after year, she suffered because she could not have children, feeling isolated and diminished. Whenever there was a family celebration, Peninnah was surrounded by her children, laughing and enjoying the party. Hannah, with no children to embrace, felt a huge emptiness in her heart. She wondered why God had not blessed her with a child. Was there something wrong with her? Why among so many women did she have to carry this pain alone? Moreover, Peninnah seemed to envy the special affection Elkanah had for Hannah and constantly provoked her. She used cruel words and looks of disdain, as if she wanted to remind Hannah all the time that she had no children. Every mean word, every ironic laugh felt like a blow to Hannah's heart. She suffered not only from the absence of children, but also from the scorn and provocations of someone who should have been her friend. Hannah's pain grew even stronger when the family went to the temple in Shiloh to worship God. In that sacred place, where she sought peace, her sadness only increased, for Peninnah continued to provoke her mercilessly. What should have been a time of spiritual renewal became a great challenge to Hannah's faith. Despite all the love that Elkanah showed her, Hannah felt alone in her sadness. He tried to comfort her, saying that his love was worth more than the love of 10 sons. But, as sincere as he was, it did not fill the emptiness she felt. Hannah's greatest desire was to be a mother, not only to silence Peninnah's taunts, but to experience the joy of having a child, someone who would bring life to her home. Hannah kept this pain to herself, but every tear that fell was like a prayer, a silent request to God. One day, when she went to the temple with her family, Hannah was sadder than ever. She felt that her suffering was almost unbearable. Her heart was heavy with the pain of Peninnah's taunts, the emptiness of not having children, and a question that would not leave her mind. Why did God allow this to happen to me? While everyone around her prayed and made sacrifices, Hannah felt that she needed a moment alone. She withdrew and found a quiet corner in the temple. She knelt down and began to cry. Her tears fell without stopping, and she did not hide her pain. Hannah gave all her suffering to God, holding nothing back. It was not a silent prayer, it was a desperate cry. She wept so much that her body trembled and her face was wet with tears. In that moment, Hannah opened her heart to God, hiding neither her pain nor her sadness. She was not just asking for a child, she wanted peace, relief, and a purpose to fill the emptiness she felt. Every word she murmured between tears was a sincere plea, the deepest desire of her heart. Hannah believed that if anyone could hear her, it was God. The priest Eli watched her from a distance and saw her lips moving, but no sound came out. Her expression was so full of pain that Eli thought she was drunk, perhaps because he was not used to seeing someone pray with such intensity. He approached her and, not understanding what was happening, said, "How long will you stay like this? Get rid of the wine." Still crying, Hannah responded humbly, "No, sir, I have not drunk any alcohol. I am just a very sad woman, and I am pouring out my heart before the Lord." She explained that it was not the effect of drink, but rather the weight of the pain she had carried for so long. Hearing this, Eli realized his mistake and was moved by Hannah's sincerity. In that moment, Hannah made a promise to God. With a voice still choked by tears, she said, "Lord Almighty, if you look upon my sadness and give me a son, I will dedicate him to you for his entire life." Hannah promised that if God blessed her with the gift of motherhood, she would dedicate that child to the service of God. He would not just be her son, but would be consecrated to God from birth. Eli, moved by Hannah's faith and sincerity, blessed her, saying, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Hannah rose with a different feeling. The pain was still there, but now she felt a peace in her heart. She believed that God had heard her prayer, that he understood her pain, and that somehow the answer was on its way. After that intense prayer, Hannah felt a change within herself. She still didn't know what would happen, but Eli's words comforted her. The priest's blessing brought new hope, and she left the temple with a lighter heart, experiencing a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Something deep inside told her that God had heard her cry. Hannah returned home with her family, and in the days that followed, she felt a calmness in her spirit. The pain and anguish gave way to a quiet waiting, a confidence that God had truly heard her. She continued her life with this new serenity, feeling that God was by her side, sustaining her faith each morning. Then something unexpected happened. A short time later, Hannah began to notice changes in her body, signs she never thought she would experience. What once seemed impossible was becoming reality. God had answered her prayer. Hannah was pregnant. Her joy was so great that she could barely hold back tears of gratitude. Each time she remembered the promise she made to the Lord, her heart filled with reverence and thanksgiving. The months passed, and finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Hannah gave birth to a son. As she held him in her arms for the first time, she remembered all the tears, the silent prayers, and the moments of sorrow she had surrendered to God. This child was God's answer, the proof that he had heard her cry and brought life where there was once emptiness. She chose a special name for him, Samuel, which means heard by God. This name carried the meaning of the miracle he represented to Hannah. Samuel was the proof that God hears those who suffer, that he does not ignore sincere prayers, and that he responds to those who seek him with faith. The arrival of Samuel was not just a blessing for Hannah, it was also a confirmation that God is faithful and can turn despair into great joy. For Hannah, Samuel was a constant reminder that, even in the most difficult situations, the Lord is always listening and acting. With a heart full of gratitude, she knew she would fulfill her promise to God, dedicating her son to the service of the Lord as a sign of her faith. Hannah cared for Samuel with all the love a mother can give. Each day with him was special, and she watched with joy every new step in his growth. She fed him, cradled him in her arms, and surrounded him with affection. For Hannah, every smile and every small milestone of Samuel was a gift from God. Even with all this happiness, Hannah did not forget the promise she had made to the Lord. Every time she held Samuel, she remembered the day she tearfully asked God for a son. And as time went by, her heart gradually prepared for the moment when she would fulfill her promise. Time passed, and Samuel grew up healthy and full of energy. He was no longer the fragile baby Hannah once held in her arms. Now he was a strong, curious child full of life. Hannah knew the time to take him to the temple at Shiloh was approaching. Her heart was torn between the joy of fulfilling her promise and the pain of saying goodbye to the son she loved so much. She had waited so long for him, and now each moment by his side felt even more precious. Finally, the day arrived. Hannah prepared Samuel with great care, dressing him in his best clothes and fixing his hair with love. She looked at him with a warm smile and tears in her eyes, but they were not tears of regret or sadness. They were of emotion and gratitude. Samuel was God's answer to her prayer, and now, with the same faith, Hannah was ready to give him to the Lord. Hannah and Elkanah traveled to the temple at Shiloh, taking Samuel with them. When they arrived, Hannah remembered her prayer, and with a firm heart, she presented Samuel to the priest Eli. "This is the boy I prayed for," said Hannah, her voice filled with emotion and confidence. "I asked the Lord for him, and he heard me. Now I give him to the Lord. He will belong to God for his entire life." Eli, the same priest who had seen Hannah praying years before, understood the depth of this gesture. He received Samuel with open arms, knowing that this child had been dedicated to God from his mother's womb. Hannah said her final goodbye to Samuel with a warm hug, and with a heart full of peace and gratitude, she gave him to God's service. Despite the pain of parting from her only son, Hannah fulfilled her promise without hesitation. Her faith and gratitude were so strong that even with the difficulty, she praised God for his goodness and faithfulness. She was sure that Samuel was in God's hands and that he had special plans for the boy. Thus, Hannah returned home in peace, trusting that God would care for Samuel and guide him to become a faithful servant. Her story of faith and dedication would be remembered for generations as an example of devotion and trust in God. Hannah's faithfulness touched God's heart. She gave her only son, trusting that he would be in good hands, serving the Lord. Even after this, Hannah continued to pray for Samuel, confident that God would watch over him. God, in his goodness, did not forget Hannah's faithfulness. He knew her past pain and the gratitude she now felt, and he decided to bless her even more. The Bible tells that after Hannah dedicated Samuel to God's service, he blessed her with 5 more children, 3 boys and 2 girls. The woman who once suffered from the absence of children now had a home filled with joy, a family that reflected God's goodness. Each new child Hannah held in her arms was a reminder that God is faithful and sees the hearts of those who keep their faith firm. For Hannah, each child was a gift that filled her life with joy and strengthened her faith. She cared for them all with the same love and dedication she had given to Samuel, and as she watched them grow, her eyes shone with deep gratitude. Now, Hannah's life was full in every way. She was not only the mother of Samuel, the prophet dedicated to the temple, but also of a large family that brought joy and love to her home. Every laugh, play, and hug from her children reminded Hannah of God's faithfulness. Hannah continued her life with the certainty that she had been blessed far beyond what she had imagined. She knew that God had not only heard her cry, but also blessed her far more than she had asked. Once despised and humiliated, she was now respected and admired, and her home overflowed with God's blessings. Her story became a living example that God is faithful and that he honors those who seek him sincerely, showing that his promises are always fulfilled. As Samuel grew up in the temple under the care of the priest Eli, he was no longer just the boy his mother had given in an act of faith. He was slowly becoming a young man dedicated to God's service. Surrounded by the sacred atmosphere of the temple, Samuel learned to serve with obedience and respect. He listened to the stories of God's promises, observed the ceremonies, and learned about the laws and teachings of the Lord. Every year, his mother, Hannah, came to visit him, bringing a new tunic made with care, following her son's physical and spiritual growth. Time passed, and Samuel grew into a wise and upright young man known for his devotion. Then, something extraordinary happened. God called him directly. On a quiet night, while Samuel was sleeping in the temple, he heard a voice calling his name. Confused, Samuel went to Eli, thinking the priest had called him. After hearing the voice 3 times, Eli realized it was God speaking to Samuel and instructed him to respond, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." From that moment on, Samuel's life changed forever. God chose him to be his prophet, the one who would carry his word to the people of Israel. Over time, Samuel became a highly respected person among the Israelites, known for his faith, honesty, and closeness to God. His words were valued, for everyone knew he was guided by the Spirit of the Lord. He stood out as a faithful prophet and a leader who always sought the people's well-being and lived for the glory of God. Throughout his life, Samuel played an essential role in Israel's history. He guided the people in difficult times, reminding them of God's promises and helping them stay faithful even in challenging times. Additionally, Samuel was responsible for anointing the first kings of Israel, first Saul, then David. Each anointing symbolized God's presence and choice, and Samuel was chosen to fulfill this mission. Samuel's story is closely linked to that of his mother Hannah. It was Hannah's unwavering faith that gave him a strong foundation. She, who had once been humiliated for not having children, became the mother of one of Israel's greatest prophets. Her life showed the power of prayer, the importance of perseverance, and the value of true devotion. Hannah proved that God honors those who seek him sincerely and confidently, even in the most difficult situations. The story of Hannah and Samuel became well known throughout Israel as a clear example that God hears, responds, and acts. They are remembered as symbols of faith and dedication, showing that the Lord is faithful and worthy of our trust. Samuel's life, shaped by his mother's faith and God's presence, proves that God truly honors those who trust in him. Write in the comments if you already knew Hannah's story in the Bible. Leave a like, share this video with others, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with upcoming videos. May God bless you.